Okay, this lesson for the KOINE Project Class, I'll make it very brief because I, like all of you, have sometimes more than one thing to do, and I have to run by and check on some folks here in a moment. So here in 1 Peter 4:17 and John 3:36b, I've already written parts of the text, and I'm going to use this definition called conflation. I've heard of that several times now. It's been brought to my attention by more than one person. It says the merging of two or more sets of information. Uh, okay, so I think this is where a lot of the tension becomes almost difficult or frustrating. The truth is, the purpose of the Bible, and we know of the Gospels, are to persuade so that people would believe. And we'll go through that real quick. So in 1 Peter 4:17, it says, what, and these are very, you know these words very well, the end of the ones, and notice this participle, the ones who are negating, notice that negative particle there, negating there we go. And remember, we build our constructs offline, and then we go to the Bible to find support. But we're leading out from the text. So the ones who are negating persuasion, that's by here, by the, notice here's the word evangel, EV is correct message, angelio, by the correct message of the God. So he asked the question, what is the end of those who are negating persuasion by the correct message, that is the gospel of the God? John 3:36, John the Baptist said that the one, or everyone, and here's post-positive conjunction, but anyway, so the one who is, let me write that, negating there we go, negating persuasion by the Son. Now what he had just said was that everyone who's already believing from this verb pisteuo, which we'll go over that in just a moment. But you notice this is where people will seemingly say two things that are totally contrary. Even, well, I guess world-renowned pastors, apologists will that advocate particular construct, let's say Calvinism, they'll say, well, I don't understand how it works. Well, we do understand how it works. We have enough words in the Bible that we can know what the Bible teaches. We know man's a causal agent, causal being. We know that from the Hebrew language. The Hifil and Hafal stems, you can look that up in Blue Letter Bible without even knowing Greek and Hebrew. You can read the description of those causal stems. So we notice in the Old Testament, miracles were used to cause people, that is to persuade people to cause themselves to believe. And you can go all the way back to Exodus 4, where Moses needed to demonstrate that God had actually appeared to him. But real quickly, let's notice here, patho, this is persuade. It is what leads to believing. So persuading, and then results in that. You remember patho, the root word patho, or the verb patho, is what resulted in pistis. You can look all these up. You can look this word up in Galatians 5:22. one of the fruit of the Spirit. And then here's patho, G3982. So you've got that. So patho leads to pistis. This results in faith. And faith is, this pistis is essentially equivalent to that word we've known, pace, mone. That's the word persuasion. So a lot of the conflict and distress comes when someone wants to say, well, just, it's really irrational that we would suggest that the person doesn't know what they're negating because it identifies in the Bible what they're negating. We enter Christ by faith. We believe into Christ. We're not generated into Christ. We're not fathered into Christ. We're not produced into Christ. We believe into Christ Jesus. We're persuaded, which results in believing. So here we have these verbs, persuade. When here we have negate, persuade, negate persuasion. So the negating persuasion results in disbelieving. So you can translate this as disbelieving. There we go. So this is why I'm not sure why anyone would want to avoid all that we can know from the Scriptures. Recently, I was asked about people who were eternally saved, and they took a text where Paul spoke of he and Timothy had been saved before the world began. They never looked up the terms, never cared what it might have meant. But I told them it's not possible that someone's eternally saved or that anyone's eternally justified. No one's eternally selected. And when we looked it up and helped them, you can notice that's Chronicles of the Ages. And Paul had said in another letter to, I believe, the church in Ephesus that in the ages to come. So it really, it was strange to see how we can import our philosophy, our flummox, and as I guess what we now know as a conflation, where we're trying to place two things together. And Peter's talking about judgment beginning at the household of God. And then he says, if judgment, and it does begin at the household of God, then what will the end be of the ones who are negating persuasion by the correct message of the God? John the Baptist said, the one who's negating persuasion by the Son will not see life, but the wrath of God is already abiding upon him. So those are very strong statements, very specific, very worded out. And as I like to say, I'm not sure how many times advocates of fallible constructs will just continue to speak and speak and speak and never compare it to their to the text. I mean, if I want to compare my construct with your construct, I'll always win because there's enough words in the Bible for me to proof text it. But one thing I like to end on is it's this word here. It's called conflation. Conflation. And you'd have to assume that the Bible contradicts, but it doesn't. You'd have to assume the Bible doesn't have words for us. But this lesson really, to resolve this, is to notice these particles like alpha-privative, or the alpha-privative that is. Notice verbs that result in faith. Notice that persuasion and faith. Notice that persuading and believing are the verbal equivalents. Negating persuasion is also disbelieving. This is often translated disobeying, which is disbelieving. So the Bible is very clear that it's not about some metaphysical flummox where we can't seem to work this out. It's about Jesus Christ, what he accomplished. It's about the correct message concerning him. It's about the correct message of God his Father that so loved he sent his Son. It's about the finished work of Christ, the perfect work of Christ to fulfill the law, fulfill all righteousness. So have a good day and enjoy this lesson. And I'll step out of the way and let you look at it. It's very concise, very succinct, and really easy to read. Those of you using KOINE or just using your Blue Letter Bible, you can use that. With that website and software alone, or that website, you can do lexical Greek and lexical Hebrew without any working knowledge where you say, well, I don't think I can write it out, or I don't think I can read it just very fluently. Well, that's second. You can go through this, use these numbers, look those texts up, And I recommend use your English Bible, King James. Go to your original language. Notice these. And you won't find a conflation in the Bible. So have a blessed day.